Be me, 28 years old, existing at the kind of medium pace that doesn't make for good stories. Not unhappy, not ecstatic, just moving through days the way water moves through a flat pipe, with no particular urgency and no real destination. I have a routine the way old buildings have cracks, not because anyone designed it that way, but because time just does that to things. Wake up at the same time, make the same coffee, sit in the same chair, go to the same place, come home, repeat. The place in question is one of those shared spaces, a kind of open arrangement, with long tables and natural light, and the general ambient noise of people existing near each other without really interacting. You know the type. Everyone's in their own world, headphones in or headphones out, but the posture of someone who has headphones in regardless. I've been going there for about a year. I know nobody's name. I know the guy with the green thermos always takes the corner seat and gets irritated if someone's already there. I know the woman who always smells like bergamot takes calls in a whisper that she believes is quieter than it is. I know the two guys near the window have a silent competition about who can order the most complicated thing without looking at the menu. I know all this the way you know the furniture in a room, by proximity and repetition, not by choice. Then, about 2 months ago, someone new started coming. She took the seat next to mine, not the seat across from me, not the seat one over, the seat directly to my left, close enough that if either of us shifted, we'd have touched elbows. First day, I figured it was just availability. Sometimes that seat's the only one open. Except it wasn't, because the space was half empty that morning. She had a dark green notebook, a pen tucked behind her ear, a jacket that was slightly too big in the way that suggests it belonged to someone else at some point, and then didn't. She opened the notebook and wrote something. She did not look at me. I did not look at her. Or rather, I looked at her exactly twice, the way you look at something you're not sure is real, a quick check, and then a deliberate return to whatever you were doing before. She had dark hair, slightly wavy, pulled back but not carefully, the kind of hair that's decided how it wants to behave and isn't asking for input. She had a way of sitting that was very still, not rigid, just contained, like someone who's learned to take up exactly the amount of space they're entitled to and not 1 inch more. She wrote for a while. I did whatever I was doing. I genuinely couldn't tell you what, because whatever it was, it stopped being interesting the moment she sat down. She left before me. She didn't say anything when she left. Not goodbye, not sorry for the elbow proximity, not a smile in my direction. Just closed the notebook, tucked the pen behind her ear again, picked up her bag, and was gone. I sat there for a minute thinking about that. Then I went back to what I was doing. Second day, same seat. This time she had a book, in addition to the notebook. Something thick with a broken spine. The kind of book that's been read more than once. I couldn't see the cover. She read. She wrote occasionally. She didn't look at me. I started noticing things without deciding to. She had a small scar on her left hand, on the knuckle of her index finger, barely visible but there. She held her pen the way left-handed people do, slightly awkward from years of compensating, wrist curved, ink smearing if she's not careful. She had a habit of pressing her lips together when she was thinking, just slightly, not a frown, more like someone choosing words. None of this is information I sought out. It just accumulated the way ambient things do when you're sitting close enough to someone for a few hours every day. Third day, same seat. Fourth day, same seat. By the fifth day, I had stopped registering it as a choice she was making and started treating it as a fact about the world, the way you stop noticing the furniture. Except I kept noticing her, which was the problem. My friend Owen found out about this development on day 8, because Owen has a radar for when something is happening in my life that I'm not talking about, and he deploys it without mercy. We were at a bar, the kind of bar that's been there long enough to be comfortable without being cool, and I was being slightly distracted and not doing a good job of hiding it. "You have a face," Owen said. "I have several faces. I was born with them. The specific face. The one you get when something's going on that you haven't decided to tell me about yet. Nothing is going on. Something is definitely going on." Owen is 29 and has known me for 6 years, and is the kind of person who treats other people's emotional evasions as puzzles specifically designed for him to solve. I told him about the girl, not everything, just the basics, the seat, the silence, the notebook, the scar on the knuckle. He listened with the focused attention of a man receiving important intelligence. "And you haven't talked to her. She hasn't talked to me either. You're the man in this scenario. Presumably, what are you doing? Sitting next to her in silence, apparently. For 8 days. She seems like she wants to be left alone. The entire energy is leave me alone. The entire energy is I sat next to the same person for 8 consecutive days. Which, for your information, is not the energy of leave me alone. I thought about that on the way home. He wasn't wrong. You don't choose the same seat for 8 days running if you want to be left alone. You choose a different seat. The space had plenty. She kept choosing mine. Or rather, she kept choosing the one next to mine, which is a meaningfully different thing from choosing mine, but in the same general category. Day 9, she came in later than usual. I noticed this the way you notice when something that's been on schedule suddenly isn't, a small hiccup in the rhythm. She sat down, opened the notebook, did not look at me. I did not look at her. We did this for about 20 minutes. Then, without prelude or explanation, she pushed her notebook toward me slightly. Not all the way, just an angle shift, enough that what she'd been writing was visible. It was a sketch, not words, a sketch, a small detailed drawing of the green thermos guy in the corner, captured in maybe 20 lines, but somehow exactly right, the irritated posture, the proprietary relationship with the chair. I looked at it. I looked at her. She was looking at the page with an expression of total neutrality, like she'd just offered me a piece of gum and was waiting to see if I wanted it. I took out my own notebook, which I used for work-adjacent thinking, and wrote, accurate and slightly devastating. I pushed it toward her. She read it. She pressed her lips together. She picked up her pen and wrote something on her own page, then angled it toward me again. He's been here longer than anyone. I think the chair might actually be his. I wrote, legally or spiritually. She wrote, both. This is the first conversation we had. It lasted maybe 4 exchanges, and then she went back to her own work and I went back to mine, and we sat in silence for another 2 hours. But it was a different quality of silence than before, the way a room feels different after you've actually turned the lights on versus just had the curtains open. I told Owen. A note conversation? Like children? It felt very natural. It's adorable is what it is. That's the word. You're being adorable at 28. Congratulations. We're just sitting next to each other. You're writing notes to each other. That's what happens. Before things happen. I know this. I've seen movies. Owen is not wrong about a lot of things, which is why his friendship is simultaneously valuable and exhausting. The note conversations continued. They were never planned. They just happened. When one of us noticed something worth noting, she drew things more often than she wrote things. Quick sketches in the margins of her notebook. Little observational captures. The Bergamot whisper call woman got a sketch that somehow conveyed the complete confidence of someone who has never once considered that they might be being loud. The complicated order guys got a 2-panel thing that was essentially a comic strip without words, their expressions saying everything. Occasionally she'd write something, a thought or an observation, and push it in my direction. Once she wrote, "Do you think anyone in here knows what anyone else in here is actually doing?" I wrote, "I know you're drawing people without their knowledge." She wrote, "That's fair." I wrote, "And probably accurate enough to be a legal concern." She wrote, "You're safe. I haven't drawn you." I wrote, "Why not?" She took a longer pause than usual before writing anything. Then she wrote, "You're harder." I sat with that for a while. I didn't push it. She went back to her work. I went back to mine. 3 days later, she drew me. She slid the notebook over without looking up, same as always. It was a small sketch, just the top half of me, from her angle, the side of my face, the way I hold a pen when I'm thinking, which apparently involves pressing it against my lip in a way I was entirely unaware of. It was good, unsettlingly good, the way good sketches are, capturing something that photographs wouldn't necessarily catch. I wrote under it, "You waited until you figured it out." She wrote, "I didn't want to get it wrong." I wrote, "You didn't." She took the notebook back, and I watched her look at the drawing for a moment before closing it. This is the part where I should tell you that I knew what was happening and was doing something intentional about it. I was not. I was just showing up every day and sitting next to her and exchanging notes and going home and lying awake for a slightly longer than average amount of time thinking about the scar on her knuckle and the way she presses her lips together when she's choosing words. Owen said this was the most passive romantic situation he had ever witnessed in 6 years of watching me live my life, and that he meant this as neither criticism nor compliment, just observation. I told him I wasn't sure it was romantic. "She drew you," Owen said, with the energy of a man who cannot believe what he's hearing. She draws everyone. She waited until she could get you right, specifically, which is not what she does with everyone, which is different, and you know it's different. I knew it was different. I'm not an idiot. I just needed to hear it said out loud by someone who wasn't me. The routine continued. Same seat, same silence between notes, same quality of proximity that felt like its own language. I started bringing coffee for two sometimes, not as a gesture, just as a fact. I was going to get coffee. There were two of us. It seemed wasteful not to. The first time I did this, I set the second cup down on her side without explanation. She looked at it, looked at me, looked back at it. She picked it up, she drank it. She wrote on her page and angled it. How did you know how I take it? I wrote, I paid attention. She pressed her lips together and looked at her notebook for a long time. Then she wrote, that's a dangerous answer. I wrote, I know. Neither of us wrote anything for about an hour after that. It wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy in the way things get when something's been said that can't be unsaid, and both people are deciding what to do with it. I started learning things about her the way you learn things about someone through side conversations, obliquely, without any direct line of questioning. She was 27. She had a complicated relationship with the book she was always reading. I could tell because her expressions while reading ranged from absorbed to annoyed to something that looked like grief. And once she closed it and just stared at the table for a full 5 minutes before opening it again. When I wrote that book is doing something to you, she wrote back, it does something different every time. This is my fourth read. When I wrote, what's different this time? She took a while, then wrote, I am. She had opinions about small things, with a specificity that suggested the big things were things she thought about privately. Once she wrote, completely unprompted, there are 3 people in this room who are pretending to work and doing it badly. 3 who are actually working, and everyone else is somewhere in between and deeply conflicted about it. I wrote, which category am I? She wrote, which category do you think you are? I wrote, genuinely working. She wrote, you've spent 40 minutes watching that guy talk to himself. Which was correct. There was a guy near the back who talked to himself very quietly while he worked, and I had become mildly fascinated by this. I wrote, research. She wrote a small sad face, which was the first purely expressive notation she'd ever used, and something about that small sad face in the margin of her green notebook felt significant in a way I couldn't quite articulate. We had been doing this for 5 weeks. 5 weeks of notes, of coffee, of sitting in the same quality of silence, of her drawings and my observations, of building this whole grammar of proximity without ever once having an actual spoken conversation. My friend Petra, who is more analytical than Owen, and therefore more frightening, diagnosed the situation over dinner one night. Petra is 28, works with systems, and approaches human behavior with the same methodology she'd apply to anything else she wants to understand. You've built an entire relationship in a medium that removes the need for real-time response, she said, pouring wine with the precision of someone who has measured things professionally. It's not a relationship. It's something. And the medium is the message, which means the fact that it's happening in notes is telling you something about what kind of relationship it is, which is what? 1, where both of you are choosing your words carefully, which means both of you are scared of getting it wrong. I thought about what the girl had written when I asked why she hadn't drawn me. I didn't want to get it wrong. She said that, I told Petra. That she didn't want to get it wrong? About the drawing. Petra was quiet for a moment, which from Petra means she's processing. She's been trying to get you right for weeks, Petra said. The drawing was her deciding she had. I said nothing. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. You need to do something. Things that stay in the medium of notes for too long become an artifact instead of a real thing. I didn't know what I was going to do. What I did, it turned out, was nothing intentional. It was a Tuesday. She came in looking different in the way that has nothing to do with appearance, the way someone looks when the inside of them is doing something the outside is trying not to show. She sat down, opened the notebook, did not write. For 45 minutes she just sat there. She wasn't reading, she wasn't drawing, she was just present in a way that felt like the absence of her usual activity more than the presence of anything else. I wrote on my page and pushed it. Are you okay? She looked at it for a long time. She wrote, define okay. I wrote, Not okay in a way that's going to pass, or not okay in a way that wants company. She read this. She read it again. She wrote, the second one. So I just sat there. I didn't write anything. I didn't move closer or further away. I just continued to exist next to her, which felt like the right response to the second kind of not okay. After a while, she opened her notebook and drew something. It was the two of us, small, from an imaginary angle from above. Just two figures at a table, heads down, the space between us neither large nor small, just the right amount. She closed the notebook. She stayed another hour. She left without writing anything. 2 days later was when she slipped me the note, not angled toward me in the usual way, an actual folded piece of paper, torn from the notebook, slid under my elbow while I was looking the other direction. I felt it before I saw it. I picked it up, and she was looking at her work as if she had not done anything. I unfolded it. It said, I know we don't do words out loud, but I keep thinking about what you said about the coffee, about paying attention. I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing I keep looking for, and not finding. And then I sit down next to someone, and they just do it without making it an event. And I don't know what to do with that. So this is me not knowing what to do with that. In writing. Since that's how we do things. I read it twice, then I folded it back up and put it in my pocket. I took out a piece of paper and wrote something, and folded it, and slid it under her elbow the same way. She waited a beat before picking it up. She read it. Her expression did something that I don't have a clean word for. It was the expression of someone who has been holding a breath for longer than they realized, and just remembered they're allowed to exhale. My note said, I know we don't do words out loud, but I've been paying attention since day one. Everything. The pen, the scar, the way you choose words, the second kind of not okay. All of it. I'm not making it an event either, but I'm telling you so you know. She folded the note. She put it in her jacket pocket, the inside one, close to the body. She did not look at me. I did not look at her. We sat in silence for another hour, but it was the third kind of silence, the kind that has something decided in it. Owen texted me that evening. What happened today? You have the post face now. I texted back. What's the post face? The face that comes after the face. What happened? I sent him a photo of the folded note. He sent back 11 exclamation marks and a voice message that was mostly incoherent, but contained the phrases, I told you, and the notes, and oh my God, in that order. Petra sent a single text when I told her, artifact or real thing. I wrote back, real thing. She sent a thumbs up. The next morning, I came in at the usual time, and she was already there, which was new. She usually arrived after me. She had 2 coffees on the table. She did not look up when I sat down. I looked at the coffees. I looked at her. She had her pen behind her ear, and her notebook open, and her expression was the specific one of someone who is pretending extremely hard to be focused on what they are doing. I sat down. I picked up the second coffee. I wrote on my page, you paid attention. I turned it toward her. She read it. She pressed her lips together and looked at her notebook. Then she wrote, slowly enough that I could see her forming each letter. I've been paying attention since day one. Obviously. I sat with that. The morning continued. The same space, same silence, different weight. At some point around noon, she started a new page in her notebook and drew something. And this time she didn't slide it toward me. She just left it open on the table, where I could see it without moving. It was a drawing of 2 coffee cups, side by side, drawn with the same economy of line she used for everything, just a few strokes, but somehow containing everything. Under it, she had written a single word, finally. I looked at the word for a while. I looked at her. She was looking at the page with total concentration, pen pressing slightly into her lower lip. I wrote on my page the only thing that seemed accurate. Yeah. I angled it toward her. She read it, and then, for the first time in 5 weeks of sitting next to each other, she smiled. Not at me. At the notebook. At the table. At the general vicinity of everything. But it was the realest smile I'd seen in a long time. The kind that happens before the person doing it has thought about whether they should. My face, when the first real conversation we had, was written entirely in the margins of notebooks, and I still haven't learned her name. Be me. Still 28. Still showing up to the same space. Still sitting in the same seat. Except now there are 2 coffees every morning, and a smile I've been cataloging with the focus of someone who knows they're looking at something rare. We had exchanged notes about everything except our names. 5 weeks of sketches and observations, and the second kind of not okay. And finally written in a notebook margin, and I still didn't know what to call her when I thought about her. Which I did frequently. I called her the girl with the notebook in my head, which Owen pointed out was both accurate and completely insufficient. You have to ask her name at some point. That's not optional information. It'll happen. When? When it's the right moment. You wrote notes for 5 weeks, before admitting you'd been paying attention. At this rate, you'll be exchanging telegrams before you have a first date. Owen was not entirely wrong. The right moment came in a way I couldn't have engineered if I'd tried. It was a morning about a week after the finally note. She came in, sat down, set up the 2 coffees as had become the pattern, one hers, one mine, and opened her notebook. I opened mine. At some point she turned to a new page and started writing something. Not a drawing this time. Actual sentences, a lot of them, filling most of the page. I did not read it. It wasn't angled toward me, and the unspoken grammar of our arrangement was that angling meant sharing, and not angling meant privacy. After a while she stopped. She looked at what she'd written. She tore the page out, slowly, carefully. Not the way you tear a page in a hurry, but the way you do it when you want the action to feel deliberate. She folded it. She pushed it toward me. This was more than a note. This was a thing she had written and then decided to give me, which is a different category. I picked it up, I read it. It said, "I've been thinking about how we didn't start with names. Most things start with names and then try to build the actual person around them. We did it backward. You know the scar on my hand and the way I hold a pen and what I'm like when I'm the second kind of not okay. You know I've read the book 4 times and I'm different every time. You know I observe people without their knowledge, and you know I waited until I could get you right. You know these things and they are more accurate than a name, but also my name is Elena, and I want to know yours." I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my pen and wrote at the bottom of her page and folded it back and pushed it toward her. She read it. Her expression did the thing. I had written, "Mine is Alex, and everything you just said is exactly right. We did it backward, and it's the best conversation I've had in years." Elena, that was her name. It fit the way a word fits when you hear it, and realize you couldn't have invented a better one. She picked up the page, folded it, put it in the inside pocket of her jacket. I kept the original. And we sat in the specific silence of 2 people who have just done something significant and are letting it settle before they figure out what comes next. Owen's response, when I texted him the name, "Elena, she's real. This is real. I am emotional about this, and I'm not apologizing for it." Petra's response, "Interesting that the name exchange came from her. She moved first. Note that." I noted it. The spoken conversation happened 4 days later. We were packing up at the same time for the first time, both of us reaching the end of whatever the day had held at the same moment, and as we stood there was a pause, the kind that happens when neither person is quite ready to be somewhere else. "I'm going to get food," she said. First words. Her voice was quieter than I'd expected, and completely familiar at the same time, the way you recognize a song from its first note, even if you've never consciously memorized it. "Same," I said. "You could come." "Yeah." This is how we had our first spoken conversation. Not through any planning or construction, just 2 people heading the same direction at the same time. We went to a place 2 blocks away, the kind of place that's been there long enough to not need to try, and sat across from each other for the first time, which was a spatial change that held a different kind of information than sitting side by side. Sitting across from someone means you can see their whole face at once, which is both more information and a different quality of exposure than the side view that had been our default. She had dark eyes, which I knew, but from this angle I could see that they did something specific when she was thinking, a slight shift of focus inward. She ordered tea and looked at the menu with the attention of someone who takes small decisions seriously, which I had guessed from the note writing and was now confirmed. We talked. Actual words, out loud, in real time, with all the vulnerability that involves. Notes give you editing time, a moment between thought and expression where you can choose. Conversation doesn't give you that. Conversation is just the thing, unfiltered, arriving in the air between you as it's formed. 4. It was terrifying, in a way that felt completely right. She talked about the book, the one she'd been reading since I'd known her. It's about a woman who makes a decision in chapter 3 that the whole rest of the book is a consequence of. And every time I read it, I understand the decision differently. What's the decision? She leaves. Leaves what? Everything she's built? Everything that's comfortable? She just leaves. And the consequences? Mixed, Elena said, and smiled into her tea. Mostly good but complicated. Mostly good but complicated sounds like most worthwhile things. She looked at me with the focus shift inward. Yeah, she said. It does. I told her about Owen, about the progressive exasperation the note situation had been causing him for weeks. He thinks we should have done everything faster, I said. Your friend sounds impatient. He contains multitudes. Impatience is just the loudest one. I'm glad we didn't do it faster, she said, which she said to her tea, not to me, which meant she hadn't quite decided whether she was saying it to me or just saying it. Me too. She looked up. The afternoon went on. We talked about small things and large things in roughly equal proportion, which is the right ratio for a first conversation that is actually a 50th conversation depending on how you count. At some point she said, I have a question I wasn't sure I was going to ask. Ask it. Why didn't you start talking first? You're the one who said you'd been paying attention since day one. I thought about this. I wasn't sure if you wanted words, I said. You seemed like you knew what you wanted, and words weren't it. She considered this. That's right, she said. And also wrong. How? I didn't want performative words, the kind people use when they're performing interest. But I didn't not want words. I just wanted them to mean something when they arrived. Do these? She looked at me across the table. Yeah, she said, which she said with a certainty that made the word feel final in the best sense. We walked back in the same direction. At the point where the direction stopped being the same, she stopped walking. I stopped too. She had her notebook under her arm, and her jacket slightly too big, and her pen behind her ear, a pen she had carried to dinner, and apparently saw no reason to leave behind. Same time tomorrow? She said. Same seat, I said. She almost smiled, and then fully smiled, and walked away. I texted Owen. We had the verbal conversation. Owen, I need a full debrief immediately. How was her voice? Owen, did she seem like her notes? Owen, Alex, I am asking important questions. I called him on the walk home and gave him the debrief, and he was gratifyingly invested in every detail. She said, yeah, like that, he said, with the finality. Yeah. You're in significant trouble, he said, not unkindly. That's the kind of yeah. That means someone has made a decision. Petra sent me a message later. How did the first real-time conversation go? I sent her. She said yeah with finality. Petra sent back. She moved first again, still noting that. The next weeks arranged themselves differently than before. We still had the notes. Those didn't stop. They just existed alongside conversation, the way two languages can coexist in the same speaker, without one replacing the other. Sometimes she'd slide a sketch during a long, quiet stretch, and I'd respond in writing. And it was the same as it had always been. Just now there was also the dimension of her voice and her face from across a table, and the way she said certain words, with a slight extra weight on the syllable she found most important. I learned things at a different rate now. She had a sister, 2 years older, who she described as the louder version of me, which sounds impossible, but is real. She had opinions about rain that were both meteorological and philosophical. She had been to 4 countries, and had strong feelings about 3 of them. She had a habit of looking slightly away from you when she was saying something she'd been working up to, as if saying it to the space beside you was an intermediate step between thinking it and saying it directly. I catalogued all of this with the same attention I'd given to the scar and the pen and the lip pressing. Owen met her about a month after the first spoken conversation, which was enough time for Elena to have moved from a story Owen was invested in to a person Owen was genuinely curious about. We went to a bar, the same one where Owen had first correctly identified the face, which felt appropriate. Elena was quieter in a group than she was one-on-one, not uncomfortable, just conservative with output in the way of someone who is listening hard enough that talking would interfere. Owen, who has the social opposite of this tendency, directed most of his energy at her, and she received it with the calm of someone who had correctly anticipated exactly this. She's been drawing you for weeks before you knew, Owen said to her at some point. She drew me first, I said. Chronologically, yes, but she waited until she could get you right, which means she was building to it for longer. Elena looked at Owen with an expression I'd started to recognize as the one she used when she was deciding how honest to be. "I started noticing things about him on day 2, she said. "I wasn't ready to draw them until week 3. That's just how long it takes me." Owen looked at me with an expression that could only be described as "I told you." I told him, later, that she'd started paying attention on day 2. "Day 2, he said. "Well, you were on day 8 wondering if she even wanted to be approached. I was being careful. You were being oblivious. There's a meaningful difference. Fair. Petra met Elena separately, over dinner with just the 4 of us, which was the higher stakes introduction, because Petra's approval mechanism is more rigorous. Petra's approval mechanism is essentially, I will ask you precise questions and evaluate the quality and consistency of your answers and let you know what I think. Elena handled this with a composure that I found both reassuring and privately hilarious. "You started the name exchange," Petra said at some point, in the direct way Petra has of saying things that sound like observations but are actually tests. "Yes. Why?" "Because it was time, and I knew he wasn't going to." "Why weren't you going to?" Petra said to me. "I thought she'd do it when she was ready." "And she did," Petra said. "Which means you understood that about her correctly." I'd been paying attention. Elena looked at me across the table with an expression I didn't have a word for yet, the specific one that appeared when something confirmed something she'd already decided. Petra sent me a text the next morning. "She's precise and honest and doesn't perform. Keep her." From Petra. This was essentially a standing ovation. The fight, when it came from a place I didn't see, because it was underneath things. We had been doing this for about 3 months by then. The coffee and the notes and the words and the dinners and the slow accumulation of a shared life that neither of us had formally announced, but both of us were clearly building. She had a key to my apartment. Not because we'd had a conversation about it. It had just happened through the logic of how often she was there, and how inefficient it was for her not to. I knew how she took her coffee, and what she was like in the morning before the first cup, and what her version of a bad day looked like, and what she needed when she was the second kind of not okay, which was mostly presence and not questions. She knew the same caliber of things about me. This is a kind of knowing that accumulates without ceremony. The fight started with a small thing, as most real fights do. I had made plans with Owen on a night she'd assumed we'd spend together. She hadn't told me she'd assumed this. I hadn't asked. I came home from Owen's to find her at my kitchen table with the green notebook and an expression that was doing the thing where you are feeling something larger than the proximate cause. "I didn't know you had plans," she said. "I thought you knew." "I didn't. I should have said something." "You should have. This could have been the end of it." It wasn't. "The thing is," she said, and she said it to the table, which meant it was the intermediate step between thinking and saying, "I do this thing where I assume people know what I mean without saying it, because that's how I communicate, in things that are visible if you're paying attention, and then I get hurt when they don't." "Elena, I'm not done. I'm not blaming you. I know I do it. I know it's a flaw in the system where I expect people to observe their way to understanding me, which is unfair, because most people can't, but I got used to the fact that you can, which made me sloppy about actually saying things, and then when the thing I didn't say went unregistered, I felt it like something was broken, when actually I just forgot to do the basic step. I listened to this whole thing. Can I talk now? Yes. I pay attention. That's real. But I'm not infallible. I'm going to miss things, especially the things you've decided I should know without telling me. And when I miss them, I need you to tell me you assumed I'd know, rather than waiting for me to figure out that I missed something. She was quiet. "That's fair," she said finally. "It is. And also, I should have told you about Owen. That's also true. Both things can be true. Both things can be true." She looked at the notebook. "I'm used to not saying things," she said. "It's the whole structure I built for myself. It's how I started with you." "Yeah. At some point the structure has to be able to hold words too." "Yeah. That's the part I'm working on." "Me too," I said. "I'm working on saying things instead of assuming you'll read them." She looked up. "We have the same problem from opposite directions." "That's the most accurate thing you've ever said about us." She almost smiled. Then she fully smiled. Then she picked up her pen and wrote something in the notebook and turned it toward me. "We should have argued sooner. This is also good." I laughed. She looked pleased with herself in the way of someone who has handled something better than they expected to. I wrote back, "Noted. Also, you're right. The fight, if it could be called that, lasted maybe 40 minutes. The space it opened between us closed within the hour, but the conversation it produced stayed. After that, she said things instead of assuming I'd see them. She got better at this, slowly and imperfectly, the way people get better at things they've spent a long time not doing. And I got better at telling her things out loud instead of just showing up and hoping the showing up communicated it. Owen called this the most literary relationship I've ever had secondhand, and said he was going to write it up somehow, and Elena said he was welcome to try, and she'd supply the sketches. He did attempt this, actually. 3 pages of notes that never went anywhere, which I still have, because Elena kept 1 page, and I kept the other 2. The other 4 of us became a thing that happened regularly. Dinner, the bar, sometimes a walk that started purposeful and ended up somewhere else. Petra and Elena had a dynamic I hadn't predicted, which was mutual respect deployed at the pace of 2 people who don't waste either. They didn't become immediately close, they became precisely close, which is a different thing, and in my view the better one. Elena and Owen became a different kind of close, which involved Owen declaring himself her unofficial biographer and her giving him detailed and unsparing critiques of his actual writing, which he received with a gratitude that surprised everyone, including him. "She means it," he told me once. "When she says something is good, she means it's good. And when she says it doesn't work, she means that too. I've never had a reader who was this honest. She's like that about everything." I know. It's incredible. The months moved. Things between Elena and me deepened at the pace of things that are going somewhere real, which is slower than it feels and faster than you can describe. She moved most of her things to my apartment over a period of several weeks in a way that was less a decision and more a series of small, logical steps that added up to a state of affairs. Her plants came first, because the light in my apartment was better. Then her books, because she kept needing ones she didn't have with her. Then more clothes, because she was always at my place and kept having to go back for things. Then the green notebook, plural by this point, a stack of them, the record of 2 years of observations that she kept in a dedicated shelf that we cleared together on a Saturday morning. I came home one afternoon to find her cross-legged on my floor surrounded by the notebooks, and she looked up and said, "There are 53 of you in here." 53. 53 drawings, across all of them, since day 2. I sat down on the floor with her. She handed me the first one, the oldest notebook. I found myself on page 4. It was just the top of my head, roughly blocked in, like she'd drawn it fast, an impression of me looking down at whatever I was working on. I found the drawing she'd shown me after week 3, the side view with the pen against my lip. It was better than I remembered. 53, I said. "I couldn't stop getting you right," she said, looking at the notebook, not at me. Once I started, it kept requiring more. I sat on my floor with the stack of notebooks and the 53 versions of me, and the woman who had been paying attention since day 2, and I understood with the specific clarity that comes from accumulated evidence that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I said something. I said it out loud, in words, in real time, without a note as intermediary. "I want to do this forever," I said. She looked up. "Do what?" "This. All of it. The coffee and the silence and the notes and the 53. All of it. With you. I want to do it indefinitely." She was quiet for a moment that lasted the right amount of time. "I know," she said. "You know? I've known since you said both things can be true after the fight, because that was the moment I realized you were going to keep getting me right even when I made it harder, which is the specific thing I was looking for and didn't think existed." "So yeah?" I said. "So yeah," she said, the same finality as the first time, except now it had more behind it. "We got engaged the following spring. I proposed with the first note she'd ever slid me, which I had kept in my wallet since that day, framed behind glass in a small frame, because what else do you do with the first words someone offers you?" She looked at it for a long time. "You kept it," she said. "I kept it. Since day 9. Since day 9. She said yes in writing, naturally. She took out the notebook she always had with her and wrote "yes" in the largest letters she'd ever written in any of her notebooks, a whole page of "yes" in capital letters that she tore out and handed to me, and I still have it. Owen cried. He cried first, and then recovered himself with the dignity of a man who was not expecting to cry, but finds he cannot apologize for it. Petra said, "Correct outcome," which from Petra was also tears, just expressed differently. We got married on a day in October that had exactly the right quality of light, which Elena said she'd been specific about when thinking about it, because she'd been drawing the light in her notebooks for years and knew what she wanted. Owen spoke at the wedding. He read from the 3 pages of notes he'd written about our relationship, the ones that had never gone anywhere, and the room was quiet in the way rooms get when something is being said accurately. He read the part where Elena had started paying attention on day 2 and said that what that meant to him, as someone who'd watched the whole thing from the outside, was that she had been accumulating the real version of me from the beginning, before she knew me, just from proximity and silence and careful observation. Most people start with the name, he said, and try to build the person around it. These two built the person first and got to the name last, which is backwards and also completely right. Elena, next to me, wrote something in the small notebook she'd slipped into the pocket of her dress, because of course she had, and angled it toward me. He got it right. I wrote back, he usually does when it matters. The first year of marriage was the year of finding out what you assumed and what was actually there. Not in a bad way, just in the way of truth arriving in new rooms you hadn't walked through yet. We argued about things small enough to be laughable in retrospect, and things large enough to require the real vocabulary we'd been building since the fight about Owen. We got better at saying things out loud. Both of us, together, imperfectly and continuously. She kept the notebooks. 53 became 100, became 200, the record of us accumulating at the pace of a life being lived. She drew me differently over time. Not because I changed, she said, but because she kept learning things that required new angles. You're harder than everyone else, she told me once, on a Sunday morning, which was the echo of what she'd written on day 1 about why she hadn't drawn me yet, and she said it with the same specificity. Harder to draw? Harder to get right. It keeps requiring more. Is that a problem? It's the opposite of a problem. The baby came in the 3rd year of marriage. We didn't find out the gender beforehand, because Elena said she wanted to draw the idea first and then meet the reality, which was a completely Elena thing to say, and which I agreed to immediately. She drew the idea in her notebook for 9 months, small sketches, impressions, hypotheses. The day our daughter arrived was the loudest day I had ever experienced in my life, which Elena said afterward was the appropriate response to someone that significant entering the world. She drew her that same day, in the hospital, on a page that's now framed and hanging in a room painted the color Elena chose because she said the light would be right. We named her Mara, which Elena chose because it was her grandmother's name and also because she said it was a word that had weight in it, which she wanted for a daughter she'd already decided would know how to carry things. Mara came into the world loud and specific and full of opinions about everything, which I had predicted and Elena had drawn in advance. Owen became the unofficial biographer of Mara also, which Mara, at age 2, treated with exactly the tolerant exasperation of someone who has seen this behavior before, because she'd grown up watching her mother receive it. Petra became Mara's godmother, which she accepted with the solemnity of a woman who takes every commitment at full weight. I have a photo on my phone, from when Mara was about 18 months old. She's sitting on the floor next to Elena, who has a notebook open, and Mara is attempting to draw in her own small notebook with a pen that's too big for her hand. The expression on Mara's face is total concentration, the same as her mother's. The expression on Elena's face, looking at her, is the one I'd cataloged since day 9, the one that happens before the person doing it has thought about whether they should, the one that's real before it's decided. I have not drawn either of them. I'm not a drawer. What I do is pay attention. And what I know from paying attention is this. There are 53 drawings of me in the notebooks. There are 2 drawings of the word yes, one original and one Mara attempted in crayon when she was 3 and found the framed one and wanted to make her own. There is 1 page from the original notebook that I kept in my wallet for 7 months and then put in a frame. There is a woman who started paying attention on day 2. And there is me, who showed up every morning to the same seat next to hers and paid attention back. And everything that followed was the consequence of that, the mostly good kind, the complicated and permanent and entirely right kind, that feeling when you spent 5 weeks exchanging notes with someone before learning her name, and it turned out to be the most direct route to everything.
Same seat every morning, coffee going cold. I kept my eyes down like I'd been doing for years.
You had a pen behind your ear,
A notebook full of things I couldn't see,
and all the silence between us
was the loudest thing in the room to me.
I didn't ask, you didn't say. We just kept arriving like we'd always known the way. You slipped me a note, written careful and slow. Everything we couldn't say out loud, you wrote it down so I would know.
I've been paying attention since day one, since the start. You said that was a dangerous answer.
I said I know,
I know.
You drew the whole room in 20 lines or less, everyone but me, till you said I was harder.
Said you needed more to get me right.
So you waited 3 weeks, and then you showed me what you saw in the light. I didn't rush, you didn't hurry.
We built the whole person
Before we got to the name, you slipped me a note,
finally
written in full,
everything backward,
the way it should be.
We skipped the easy parts, went straight to the real.
You said I know,
Yeah. Same kinda not okay.
same kinda not okay.
Staying.
That was all we needed, and I slipped me a note.
On an ordinary day,
53 drawings later,
I'm still paying attention.
the same way, same seat, same silence, same coffee going warm.
Same, you getting me right in the margins.
Every morning,
Every morning.
every morning.
I kept the note.